the 1840s, photography was a luxury. Daguerreotypes required silver-coated copper plates, toxic mercury vapor, and exposure times measured in minutes. A single portrait could cost a week's wages. By the 1860s, cartes de visite flooded middle-class parlors at pennies apiece. Cameras appeared in government offices, prisons, hospitals, and census bureaus across continents. Within 20 years, institutional photography went from non-existent to standard practice. The same 20 years saw handwritten ledgers replaced by pre-printed forms. Parish records that had existed for centuries without standardization suddenly adopted identical column structures. Census formats that varied wildly by region began asking the same questions in the same order. Bureaucratic photography and bureaucratic paperwork didn't just coincide, they synchronized. The timing wasn't gradual. It was compressed. For context, this documentary examines historical patterns using the term Tartaria as an interpretive framework, not a factual claim. The word appears on 18th and 19th century maps referring to Central Asian regions. Some modern researchers use it to describe architectural and institutional patterns they find difficult to reconcile with official timelines. This script explores those patterns without endorsing or dismissing any single explanation. What follows is observation, not conclusion. The official explanation is straightforward. Photography became affordable due to the wet collodion process, patented in 1851. Governments adopted it because visual records were more reliable than written descriptions. Standardized forms appeared because industrialization demanded efficiency. Two independent trends, technological and administrative, happened to overlap during a period of rapid modernization. That explanation works until you examine the scale. In 1851, Frederick Scott Archer published his collodion method. By 1854, Roger Fenton was photographing the Crimean War. By 1857, the Indian Rebellion was documented visually. By 1861, Matthew Brady was organizing teams to photograph the American Civil War. By 1863, the London Metropolitan Police required photographs of every arrested person. By 1866, the Bertillon system, linking photography to criminal identification, was being theorized in France. By 1870, census bureaus in Britain, the United States, and German states were experimenting with photographic supplements to written records. 15 years from patent to institutional ubiquity. Meanwhile, administrative reforms followed an identical curve. The 1851 British Census introduced pre-printed household schedules for the first time. The 1850 U.S. Census added columns for occupation, birthplace, and literacy, information previously recorded inconsistently or not at all. The 1858 Government of India Act reorganized colonial administration using standardized reporting templates. The 1862 Morrill Act in the United States created land-grant colleges, each required to submit identical annual reports. By 1870, municipal governments across the English-speaking world were filing nearly identical property tax documents, health inspection forms, and infrastructure surveys. The synchronization wasn't limited to Anglophone regions. Prussian state archives adopted photographic documentation in the 1860s. French prefectures began requiring identity photographs for internal passports in 1867. Russian imperial bureaucracy started photographing public works projects in the late 1860s. Even regions with different languages, legal systems, and administrative traditions converged on the same practices within the same narrow window. Consider the 1861 census of England and Wales. For the first time, enumerators used uniform schedules printed by the General Register Office. Every household answered identical questions in identical formats. The forms were collected, transported to London, and compiled into national statistics within months. The system handled 20 million people using a method that hadn't existed a decade earlier. Compare that to the 1851 census, also conducted with printed forms but less standardized, or the 1841 census, which still relied heavily on handwritten variations, or the 1831 census, which was a patchwork of local methods. The 1861 census didn't evolve gradually from earlier versions. It represented a categorical shift in administrative philosophy. Photography followed the same pattern. In 1855, most government offices had never seen a camera. By 1865, many maintained photographic archives. The shift wasn't experimental. It was systematic. The Metropolitan Police's 1863 photography mandate is instructive. The policy didn't begin with a pilot program or limited trial. It was implemented across all divisions simultaneously. Officers were trained. Equipment was purchased in bulk. A centralized archive was established. Within 2 years, the system was processing thousands of images annually. The infrastructure appeared fully formed. This raises a logistical question. Who designed the storage systems? Photographic prints degrade without proper handling. Negatives require climate control. Filing systems need to account for retrieval. Someone had to anticipate these problems before they occurred, before most institutions had taken their first photograph. The same question applies to census infrastructure. Pre-printed forms require massive print runs. Distribution networks need to reach rural areas weeks before enumeration day. Compiled data needs somewhere to go. The 1861 British census required warehouse space, administrative staff, and transportation logistics on a scale that hadn't previously existed. That infrastructure didn't materialize overnight. It was planned. But planned based on what precedent? The 1851 census had been smaller, less detailed, and less standardized. The jump to 1861 represented not an incremental improvement but a reinvention of the entire process. As if the designers had experience with something similar, something that required managing large populations, complex data, and physical archives. Photography and paperwork weren't just adopted together. They seemed designed for each other. Photographs needed captions, dates, and catalog numbers. Information recorded on standardized forms. Forms needed verification, provided by photographic evidence. The systems interlocked. By 1870, a British civil servant, an American census worker, and a Prussian bureaucrat would recognize each other's filing cabinets. Not because they'd coordinated, but because they'd independently arrived at nearly identical solutions. Which brings us to architectural timing. The buildings that housed these systems, census offices, police headquarters, archive repositories, were often constructed in the 1850s and 1860s. Many were larger than immediate needs required. The British General Register Office, completed in 1859, included storage capacity far exceeding the 1861 census demands. American state capitals rebuilt in the 1860s featured record rooms dimensioned for document volumes that wouldn't accumulate for decades. Prussian ministries constructed fireproof archives before photographic storage became standard practice. The infrastructure anticipated the system. The Erie Canal opened in 1825, connecting the Great Lakes to the Atlantic Ocean through 363 miles of engineered waterway. It was the longest canal in the world at the time of completion. The official narrative emphasizes its economic impact, transforming New York into a commercial hub, enabling westward expansion, establishing trade routes that wouldn't reach capacity for another generation. But the engineering tells a different story. The canal was built to accommodate boats carrying 30 tons of cargo. In 1825, most regional commerce moved in vessels designed for 5 to 10 tons. The locks were sized for traffic volumes that wouldn't materialize until the 1840s. The towpaths were wide enough for teams of horses that weren't yet being bred in sufficient numbers. Aqueducts crossed valleys using stone arches engineered to support weight loads beyond contemporary requirements. Someone calculated future demand with remarkable precision, then built infrastructure to match it 15 years early. The same pattern appears in British railway construction. The Liverpool and Manchester Railway, opened in 1830, was designed for double-track operation from the start. At the time, single tracks with passing loops were standard. The extra capacity wasn't needed until the late 1840s, when freight traffic exploded beyond original projections. But the tunnels, embankments, and bridges had already been dimensioned for it. The London and Birmingham Railway, completed in 1838, included Euston Station, a terminus building with a great hall large enough to process thousands of passengers daily. In 1838, the railway carried hundreds. The building wasn't expanded to meet demand. Demand eventually grew to fill the building. Across the Atlantic, the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad began construction in 1828. The initial route included bridges and viaducts engineered for locomotives that didn't yet exist. Early steam engines weighed 7 to 10 tons. The Thomas Viaduct, completed in 1835, was built to support 50-ton loads. Those loads didn't appear until the 1850s, when freight engines grew exponentially heavier. The infrastructure kept anticipating the future. In the 1840s, cities across the United States began installing gas lighting systems. The piping networks were laid with capacity exceeding immediate needs by factors of 3 or 4. Philadelphia's 1841 gas works could theoretically supply 30,000 street lamps. The city had 6,000. Boston's system, installed in 1842, included distribution mains sized for neighborhoods that hadn't been built yet. By the 1860s, those neighborhoods existed, and the pipes fit perfectly. Someone had mapped growth patterns with unusual foresight. The question isn't whether expansion was expected. Industrial cities obviously anticipated growth. The question is how expansion was quantified so accurately, so early, across so many independent systems. Consider London's sewer infrastructure. The Metropolitan Board of Works, established in 1855, began constructing Joseph Bazalgette's sewer system in 1859. The project was designed to serve a population of 4 million. London's population in 1860 was 2.8 million. The system wasn't expected to reach capacity until the 1890s, but the tunnels, pumping stations, and outfall works were built to final specifications from the beginning. Bazalgette's calculations assumed population growth rates, housing density, and water consumption patterns that had never been systematically measured. Yet his projections proved accurate. By 1900, London's population had reached 4.5 million, and the system operated within design parameters. The same engineering foresight appears in American waterworks. The Croton Aqueduct, completed in 1842, delivered 90 million gallons of water daily to New York City. The city's consumption in 1842 was closer to 30 million gallons. The aqueduct's capacity wasn't reached until the 1880s. But the masonry arches, tunnels, and reservoir were built for the larger volume from the start. No phases, no expansions. Infrastructure preceded demand with startling consistency. This pattern intensifies when examining institutional buildings. The British Museum's expansion in the 1850s included the Round Reading Room, a space designed to hold 1 million volumes. At the time of completion in 1857, the collection numbered 400,000 books. The shelving, catalog systems, and climate controls were installed for the future collection, not the existing one. In the United States, state capitals rebuilt after 1850 followed similar logic. The Ohio State House, completed in 1861, included archive vaults dimensioned for a century of accumulated documents. The Iowa State Capitol, finished in 1886, featured record storage calculated for governance structures that wouldn't exist until the 20th century. These weren't generic large rooms. They were purpose-built spaces with specific filing systems, ventilation, and access protocols. Someone understood what those systems would eventually need to contain. The administrative synchronization becomes harder to ignore when examining post office architecture. Between 1850 and 1870, the United States Postal Service constructed hundreds of standardized post office buildings. They shared identical floor plans, sorting room dimensions, and window configurations. A postal clerk transferred from Ohio to California would find familiar workspace layouts, storage systems, and procedural flows. The standardization wasn't mandated by a single federal directive. It emerged from architectural pattern books and regional consultations, yet produced near-identical results across thousands of miles. British postal infrastructure followed a parallel trajectory. The General Post Office in London, rebuilt in 1829, included sorting facilities sized for mail volumes that wouldn't arrive until mid-century. Regional sorting offices constructed in the 1840s replicated the London model with local variations, but the core systems, sorting frames, dispatch procedures, storage protocols, remained consistent. By 1860, a letter moving through the British postal system encountered the same procedural architecture regardless of origin or destination. The system had been designed as a unified whole, then implemented incrementally. This administrative consistency extends to less visible systems. Property tax assessment forms adopted by American municipalities in the 1850s and 1860s asked nearly identical questions. Square footage, construction materials, occupancy, assessed value, recorded in identical column formats. These forms weren't distributed by a central authority. They were developed independently by city clerks and county assessors who arrived at the same solutions. The convergence suggests shared assumptions about what information mattered and how it should be organized. British rate books, property tax records, underwent similar standardization. The 1850s saw handwritten ledgers replaced by pre-printed registers with uniform categories. Parishes across England adopted compatible formats without centralized coordination. By 1870, a clerk trained in Yorkshire could navigate Sussex records without difficulty. The systems interlocked as if designed by a single architect. Then there's the question of storage. Administrative records require physical space. A decade of census data fills rooms. Police photographs accumulate in filing cabinets. Tax assessments need fireproof vaults. The buildings constructed to house these systems were often completed before the systems generated enough material to justify them. The archive wing of the Massachusetts State House, added in 1853, included climate-controlled document storage sized for decades of accumulation. In 1853, the state's centralized records occupied a fraction of the available space. The vault doors, shelving, and ventilation systems were installed for the future, not the present. This pattern repeats across civic architecture. Courthouses, municipal halls, and government offices built in the 1850s and 1860s included record rooms dimensioned beyond immediate needs, but calibrated to eventual requirements with surprising precision. Photography enters this context not as an isolated innovation, but as the final piece of an existing framework. When police departments began photographing arrestees in the 1860s, they already had filing systems capable of integrating images with written records. When census bureaus experimented with photographic supplements, they had storage infrastructure ready to receive them. When municipal archives started documenting public works visually, they had catalog protocols that could accommodate the new format. The administrative machinery was already in place. Photography slotted into it. This suggests the machinery was built anticipating visual records, before cameras were common institutional tools. Whether this reflects inheritance of prior administrative traditions, convergent evolution driven by industrial pressures, or something else. The word Tartaria appears on European maps from the 16th through 19th centuries, referring to the vast territories of Central Asia stretching from the Caspian Sea to the Pacific. It was a geographic label, not a political entity, a catch-all term for regions beyond direct European observation. By the late 1800s, the term had faded from cartographic use as the Russian Empire consolidated and Western knowledge of the region improved. In the early 2000s, online researchers began using Tartaria differently, as shorthand for architectural and institutional patterns they found difficult to reconcile with conventional historical narratives. The term became a lens for examining timing anomalies, scale mismatches, and synchronization across separated regions. Three interpretive frameworks have emerged. The first sees these patterns as evidence of under-acknowledged continuity. Administrative systems, this view suggests, inherited structures from earlier governance frameworks that official histories minimize or fragment. The similarity of 19th-century institutions across continents might reflect not independent invention but transmission of older administrative knowledge. The Tartaria label in this interpretation points toward historical depth that standard periodization obscures. The second framework emphasizes convergent evolution. Industrial pressures, this interpretation argues, naturally produced similar solutions. Bureaucracies managing large populations independently arrived at comparable filing systems. Engineers solving infrastructure problems converged on similar designs. Photography was adopted simultaneously because the technology became viable just as institutional needs crystallized. The synchronization reflects parallel development, not inheritance. The third view remains agnostic, treating the patterns as genuinely anomalous without committing to explanation. This approach focuses on documentation, cataloging timing compressions, architectural consistencies, and administrative parallels, while acknowledging that current historical models may be incomplete. All three interpretations accept the observable patterns. They diverge on what those patterns indicate. Return to 1816, the year without a summer. The eruption of Mount Tambora in 1815 produced global climate disruption. Crop failures, food shortages, and population displacement followed. In the standard narrative, this catastrophe preceded the Industrial Revolution's acceleration. Infrastructure expansion, administrative modernization, and institutional standardization came after, driven by economic recovery and technological innovation. But the timing creates friction. The systems that appeared in the 1820s through 1860s seem calibrated for populations and demands that hadn't yet stabilized. The Erie Canal broke ground in 1817, in the immediate aftermath of severe disruption, yet was designed for traffic volumes a generation away. British census reforms began in the 1820s, standardizing data collection for a society still recovering from Napoleonic Wars and agricultural crisis. The infrastructure preceded the recovery it was supposedly responding to. Tartaria, in contemporary usage, functions less as a historical claim and more as a placeholder, a term indicating something feels unresolved. It marks the space between official explanations and observable patterns. Whether that space contains suppressed history, misunderstood continuity, or simply complexity that hasn't been adequately described remains open. The evidence invites examination. Institutional photography and administrative standardization synchronized across continents within a compressed timeframe. Infrastructure was built anticipating demands with unusual precision. Archival systems appeared fully formed, dimensioned for futures that hadn't arrived. These patterns don't require conspiratorial interpretation. They do require explanation. The question isn't whether 19th century governments modernized. They demonstrably did. The question is whether the speed, scale, and synchronization of that modernization align with the gradual, independent evolution the standard narrative describes, or whether it suggests coordination, inheritance, or pressures we haven't fully mapped. Photography became widespread the exact moment institutional records changed. The technologies interlocked. The buildings were ready. The systems converged. Whether by design, inheritance, or accident, the timing holds.